Well, I put a lot of our success down to a driver who didn't, in fact, get to Mexico, which was Roger Clark, because when all our other drivers were thinking of going 3 up in things like transit vans, Timo Mäkinen even wanted to take Raquel Welch as a third partner, but Roger came out here, did Santiago to Lima and said, right, it's just a long, difficult rally, treat it as a rally, go 2 up in an Escort, and this is what we did, and I'm sure that was the single decision which influenced us.
Just 5 weeks before these jubilant scenes in Mexico, 96 highly tuned rally cars had set out from England's football headquarters at Wembley to face 16,000 miles of the most testing motoring ever conceived. They called it a rally, but the Monte Carlo and Safari didn't hold a candle to this mammoth event. Crossing 2 continents and into a third, cars and competitors were to visit 25 countries in just 26 days driving. Their ultimate destination, Mexico City. The first stage of the rally, a mere 4,500 miles, threaded its way across Europe to Bulgaria and back to Lisbon in Portugal. Up among the leaders in the race across Europe were Ford's team of Escorts, almost the smallest cars among the 96, but quick to prove that lots of good things come in small packages. Behind the wheel for Ford were Timo Mäkinen, partnering Belgian champion Gilbert Stapelaer in Escort number 103, Rauno Aaltonen as the number 1 driver in Escort 46, along with Henry Liddon. Soccer star Jimmy Greaves had dropped his customary number 9 to partner Tony Fall in Escort 26, while another British crew of Roger Clark and Alex Poole were piloting Escort number 65. Looked on as possible winners of the rally were the Flying Finn Hannu Mäkelä and Gunnar Palm, with number 18 on their door, while the Polish crew of Sobislav Zazada and Marek Wachowski made up the team. By the time cars and crews reached Yugoslavia, it had become obvious just how tough this event was going to be. The route lay along roads more fitted to moving cattle than cars, gravel tracks carved out of mountainsides that hung above perilous 1,000-foot drops. Dust posed an immense problem, while drivers constantly fought off the effects of fatigue brought on by the intense concentration required through driving non-stop day and night. But there was still a long way to go. So far, in fact, that Ford's team chief Stuart Turner had laid no hard and fast tactics for the European drive.
As far as Europe was concerned, we decided really to play it off the cuff. The drivers were told that it was 16,000 miles. They knew this. In fact, Jimmy Greaves had got a sign on his dashboard saying it was this sort of distance. We always, in the first few preems on the rally, or the first few days of rally, you get this settling down process, and in fact this is precisely what happened. The pattern showed that we were quickest on the stages which were very difficult and tight, but of course Citroens took the lead over this section in Yugoslavia, which they negotiated better than we did. From then on, from Yugoslavia to Lisbon, the preems were possible within the time allowed, which meant that Hannu in particular couldn't catch the time back. Once he'd lost it, it was impossible for him to pull back from second place, but we knew that on paper we got the legs of anything else in the rally, and it was simply then a case of calming the drivers, convincing them of this, and above all, of course, stopping any inter-team rivalry.
René Trautmann in the Citroën led 71 survivors into Lisbon, but only just. 2 minutes behind came Mäkelä and Palm in the leading Escort. Jimmy Greaves confounded everyone by coming in 10th, and he was in no doubt which section in Europe had been the toughest.
Oh, the Yugoslav section, without doubt, from Titograd up to, well, up through to Monza, along the 2 preems from the Titograd Kotor preem and the Glamok Boris Krupa preem. They were the 2 really tough sections.
So which were the cars he was looking out for?
Well, I should think the Citroens, obviously, because they're all there. I think the Fords will be there at the finish, that's a certainty, somewhere down the line.
Lisbon signalled a well-earned rest for cars and drivers as the SS Derwent took survivors over the water to Brazil, to Rio de Janeiro. Coffee and soccer seemed to be the Brazilian stock in trade, but they were happy to adopt the World Cup rally as another excuse for carnival time. And with Europe looked on as a pipe opener by many leading crews, survivors now faced the long 12,000-mile South American run to Mexico. With Trautmann in the lead, Citroens posed a real challenge, holding 3rd, 5th and 7th places as well. But the Escorts of Mäkinen, Aaltonen, Greaves and Zazada were all in the first 12. The pressure now began to build up, but for everyone in the rally, the warning of floods during the Brazilian section posed an added hazard, although Stuart Turner felt Ford's team's chances wouldn't be upset.
We've laid plans to cover every
eventuality, and I think we can cope with floods. I hope it doesn't mean that the rally sort of bogs down en masse somewhere. I think it would be nice for this rally to be won by not necessarily one of the hares, but somebody who's gone briskly. We don't want a freak win.
700 miles out from Rio, at the end of the first South American stage, the fight was really on between the Escorts and Citroens. Roger Clark came right back into the running to lead Ford's team home to the first 5 places on this grueling stretch. This all-out attack on the Citroens left Mikola and Palm with a narrow lead over René Trautmann, the European winner. With Montevideo in their sights, there seemed to be no stopping the Escorts, for as they sped towards the Uruguayan capital, Mikola consolidated his lead after Trautmann had crashed in his efforts to stay on terms. Mäkinen moved to second place, ahead of Guy Verrier in the second Citroën, and fourth and fifth came the Escorts of Aaltonen and Greaves. But the very fast run down South America's east flank took its toll on the field, not the least hazardous obstacles being the massive trucks that ground their way around the narrow roads.
Trucks were a problem on certain stages. Local traffic in general wasn't particularly high, but you had this problem that a big truck can throw up an enormous slipstream of dust, and there comes a time when the driver's got to swallow hard and cross himself and pull out and have a go and go through the dust and hope and pray as he goes past. And this certainly created a problem, but there were no accidents due to the dust. But they were an incidental problem, but I would say that the trucks were really no more of a problem than the, if you like, the llamas.
19 cars had trouble on this section, and one distinguished runner to retire before reaching Mexico was Prince Michael of Kent, driving the British Army-entered Austin Maxi. Lack of road seemed to be his problem.
Well, we went off the road on the second Prem in Brazil, and went on a corner a little bit too enthusiastically and went into a bank very hard. And the sump shield, in fact, which is the part underneath the car, is very heavily built, is completely undamaged. But we've knocked the wishbones on both sides and lost the lower ball and socket joint on this wheel, as you can probably see.
And for Escort drivers Roger Clark and Alex Poole, Montevideo faded into the distance as a Volkswagen turned fairly and squarely into the path of the racing Escort. Many thought this was a tremendous setback to Ford's chances, but Stuart Turner, waiting for the Escorts to roll into a petrol stop near Montevideo, had some definite views on what had happened.
It sounds like one of these road accidents which could happen coming out of London. There are noddy drivers all over the world, and it looks as if they found one.
Was this such a blow?
It's a blow because Roger's got the right approach to this rally. He's relaxed and a good long-distance driver, and of course they were both very good mechanics. If anything happened that they needed to fix, they're quick and alert. So it's a blow, but we've still got we have 5 cars of left salto, so we've still got quite a few packed up there.
For one of the 5, Rano Aaltonen, Montevideo was a place to remember.
Well, a normal motorist had a small accident, and I think he knocked down some people. I believe that he tried to escape because he didn't stop when the police gave him a sign. And then the police just jumped into our car and we caught him. He jumped on top of Henry. The police was firing bullets to the air, and it was a bit colorful.
A light-hearted incident, but Liddon looked ahead.
It's very nice at the moment, but I said that the winner at Lisbon will not win the rally, and I'm quite sure the winner now is not going to win the rally. I would like to think we could slow down considerably now. It's a very long way to go. We haven't scratched the surface yet.
And so, from Uruguay out into the heat and blinding dust of the Argentine Pampas, and the long 6-hour stage across the Andes.
We had a very funny occasion. That was on a long trans-Argentine pream. The pream was like a swell of ocean waves, you know. And you had a sort of a higher swell every 100 yards.
Yeah.
And then they were about 30 feet high. And that was the only moment you could see your direction. And you dived into the dust again for 100 yards
Yes.
and tried to keep your direction.
Yes.
Come up again, look, where is the road going? Then go again into the
Yes.
dust. And that was very dangerous because the people have the habit of parking lorries in the dust in the middle of the road.
Dust was a problem, not just caused by lorries, but caused by other competitors. But you've got to just swallow hard, pull out and overtake and hope that you can find a sufficient stretch of road to just glimpse far enough ahead, particularly these undulating roads. Sometimes you can see from one crest over to the next crest and see whether anything's coming and take your opportunity to overtake there. It was a problem, and of course we tried to block out dust coming into the cars, but inevitably if you want windows open and so on, you're going to get some dust in, which affects the driver's eyes and contributes to fatigue.
Approaching Santiago in Chile, the Escorts of Mikkola and Mäkinen were still holding their lead over the bigger engine cars of Verrier and the Citroën and Kulcheth in a triumph. Kulcheth blazed an incredibly fast trail across the Argentine cattle country to jump ahead of Altonen and Greaves in 5th and 6th places. At Santiago, cars were to be carefully locked away from service crews in a parc fermé. And so, for the weary drivers, it was sleeves up and heads down for a bit of routine servicing on the cars, much to the astonishment of the local residents.
What you want to do, you've got to pull the bolt down so that it'll go in. It goes in at that sort of angle, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So if you get a big ring spanner and lean on it one end and then tap it in with the hammer with the other end.
In right up as far as to where it goes to the... but it's not opposite the hole then.
What do you think? Turn in and put your
Start
finger on
turning.
the end of the bolt.
idea of getting a driver's
Yeah,
finger in.
yeah.
We're very much in favour of it. This is an excellent idea. We'd have come thousands of miles to see this, and more than anything else, it's proved to the Chileans that the English really are crazy. But it's all they're doing is routine shock absorber changes, which we haven't really got time on the road. The schedule is so tight, so we've got the drivers to do. It's good practice for them.
You haven't got the top fastened to the bottom. You know when we said compress it together, you didn't tape the one to the other one, did you? No, you just pushed it and then let it go.
People have seen us servicing, but I think they forget that where we've been servicing, we've been changing above all tyres. We've used a lot of tyres, obviously. We've used a lot of brake pads, obviously, because they've been using the brakes on. And we've changed shock absorbers. But we, if you like, have been doing 5,000-mile services, but every 48 hours, because they've been cramming so much high-speed motoring over very rough roads. But Hanu's car in particular, it's had nothing done to it other than routine servicing.
And now came the biggest challenge of all, as the route climbed 16,000 feet up into the Andes.
None of the drivers wore oxygen continuously. I'm not sure if any other teams did. In fact, some people were talking about being piped up as if they were going to the moon and to breathe the stuff for sort of 57 hours. But we decided that there was more danger from overuse of oxygen than from underuse. Certainly the drivers had got a medical report warning them to be very, very careful, and we warned our co-drivers to keep a watch on the drivers, and if they saw a glazed look come over their eyes, to sort of nudge them and say, come on, watch it, you're starting to get a bit tired, or you're not reacting properly. And one or two of the drivers, Hanu Mikkola, for instance, commented that at certain corners he realised that he was taking them incorrectly because of either fatigue or because of a lack of oxygen, but he was capable and aware enough to adjust for this and to adjust his driving to cope for his reduced effectiveness.
As the cars struggled their way through the early dawn towards Lavinia and the end of one of the rally's most grueling sections, near tragedy struck, reducing the field to just 41 survivors. Whether the altitude affected the crew and caused the disaster, none will ever know. But for Andrew Cohen and his co-drivers in Triumph number 43, this Gran Premio stage high in the Andes saw the end of their challenge. Motoring quickly on loose gravel, they rounded a bend only to vanish completely from sight as they plunged off the road and down a mountainside to finish an almost unrecognizable heap of twisted metal below. Fellow competitors stopped to give what help they could, and the injured crew were finally rushed to hospital. Incredibly, all three escaped the terrible injuries they seemed certain to suffer. But their disaster heavily underlined the frightening consequences should car or driver fail.
Yes, bring it down, come on, bring it. Come on. Вот кипяченая вода, в термосе кипяченая вода. Осталось. Look, right. Look. You could you boys go? Sentamos la cabeza. ¿Era? No, no sé. La alfombra.
Also in trouble on this long 450-mile section were Tony Fall and Jimmy Greaves. The constant battering at high speeds caused wheel hub problems, losing them valuable time.
Jimmy Greaves is a professional. He's a professional at football, but it means he's a professional in his approach to anything. And certainly he took this rally very seriously, but at the same time, he got on well with people. He was a rally driver. He just fitted in with the team, and he and Tony got on extremely well together. Jimmy, when the things started going wrong, when someone over-tightened their wheels and the wheels started to come off, the way they got stuck in there and tackled the rally was a credit. Jimmy's attitude then would have been a credit to any rally driver. And of course, in Europe, I think it saved the rally because so much publicity was generated by that car that it helped to get the event off the ground, and it helped to bridge football and motoring.
Well, personally, I'm happy now because things can't get worse. I think the 57-hour stage was for the sheer distance alone, and under the conditions that we had to do it because neither of us could eat or sleep. We had to keep the car going in order to get here on time. We couldn't rest up at all. I think, time-wise, certainly the worst is over in any case. With 25 hours to Lima, which is manageable, and 37 to the boat. And I think if you get halfway there, you'll be so damn happy that you'll go like mad just to get to the boat and have a few days rest.
With the pace of the rally still red hot, many people wondered just how much longer the car's suspensions would stand up to the pounding they were getting.
The springs were fantastic because I didn't expect that the springs would last over 20,000 kilometers of this hammering.
And they did.
They did.
Oh, yeah,
They didn't even settle badly.
Indeed, fantastic suspension. Very good shock absorbers. I have never believed that normal conventional shock absorbers could be so lasting.
I think one of the key factors that was the work we did at Bagshot, the testing ground. Before the event, we first of all went out with our standard rally suspension, which is quite hard. And Roger Clark, who was largely responsible for the specification of the car, he said, well, we certainly want to come down on this. We must be able to ride better over the rough stuff, largely because of fatigue on the car and the crew. I sat in with Roger Clark going around Bagshot, and there's one piece that you just grip hard, afraid you're going to be thrown through the roof. But with the 10% softer suspension, you could sit reading, or you could sit balancing a coin on your hand nearly and just go flat out through this washaway. And this certainly played a very important part in the winter.
As 26 battered cars drove into Cali and on to Colombia's port of Buenaventura, few crewmen were sad to wave goodbye to South America. Behind them lay undoubtedly the most testing 9,000 miles motoring any of them had ever undertaken. And for 45 cars and crews, South America had proved just too much. For the gallant survivors, ahead lay the last lap, the final furlong to a Mexican Fiesta. But for Paddy Hopkirk, brake failure nearly robbed him of the chance to see Mexico.
Well, it was the section from Lima to Cali, where we were a few hours ago. It was very tight indeed, and we've been pressing on like hell. And the rear brakes failed, the cylinder burst, so we had to blank off the rear brakes. I was driving in front brakes only and making excuses. And we came to a very tight right-hand bend, and the front's just locked up now, straight on.
The Escorts of Mikula and Aaltonen held first and second places as the cars crossed to Panama, with the triumphs of Kulcheth and Hopkirk close behind in third and fourth places. Mackinnon and Greaves had brought their Escorts into 5th and 6th places. With still another 3,000 miles to go from Panama to Mexico City, anything could happen up among the leaders. Heavy trucks again posed a problem to the racing cars, and casualties during this penultimate stage included the British Army team of John Hemsley and Wally Easton. Their argument with a large truck ended their chances of getting to Mexico.
Well, we came round, unfortunately, we're slightly bald on the front with tires, and we came round and saw there was a truck on the wrong side of the road in a landslide. And the truck made no effort to move across at all. In fact, if anything, he brought his trailer further over towards our side, and we went straight underneath it. There was nothing we could do about it, in fact.
But no one could catch the flying Finn Hannu Mikkola and Gunnar Palm in their Escort. These two had dominated the rally for nearly 11,000 miles from the end of the first special stage in Brazil. The other Escorts of Mackinnon, Greaves and Zazada were racing into 5th, 6th and 8th places overall, with Rauno Altonen holding a comfortable 3rd place between the two triumphs of Kulcheth and Hopko. With just 9 hours lost in 16,000 miles of all-out motoring, the Mikkola Palm Escort romped into Mexico City. The cheers of thousands lining the route greeted the Escorts in Mexico's capital. For the jubilant crews, the biggest fiesta the excited Mexicans could lay on. And no wonder, for the Escorts had virtually cleaned the board with an outright win. 5 in the first 8 home, and the coveted man in this greatest rally spectacular of all time.
Us to experiment. It means that our engineers, when we get back, can take the cars to pieces. We have 5 cars here, all have done 16,000 tough miles. We shall learn a lot from this. Rallying isn't just to prove the cars you make, it's to help to develop the cars you're going to be making next.